Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't have to be an either or. It doesn't have to be either church or sports. Unfortunately, nowadays our culture has kind of placed those two at odds, but I don't
Right.
think that it has to be that. It could be,
No.
yeah, we're doing sports and we still have church as a high priority. And one of my passions for what I've been studying throughout these last 5 years is trying to figure out how can we better equip churches and church people to be on mission on those sports teams so that they can use that community that's naturally already created because we're all on the same
Yeah.
soccer team and we're traveling 3 hours every weekend and we're hanging out and we're eating together and blah, blah, blah. How can we say, okay, for the next 3 months of our lives, because that's travel soccer, we're going to use these 3 months to be on mission? And we're almost sent out by our church to be on
Right.
mission. So I don't think it has to be an either or, but it does have to be a let's think through what we're doing and why we're doing it, which is the point that we're talking about, right? Like I,
Right.
I want my kids to struggle with that. Like, hey, I know
Yeah.
that this team is going to force me to miss Sunday mornings or miss Wednesday nights because of practice. Is that a price that I'm willing to make? And if it is, then what am I doing for the kingdom while I'm
Yeah.
missing that Wednesday night for 3 months? Like
Right. So
that could
you
be a huge possibility for the church. Imagine if we flipped that instead of saying you're not doing God's will because you're not coming to youth group on Wednesday nights, and instead we said, okay, go do God's will and be a light in the lives of those people and those families who are there with you on Wednesday nights. That could be a huge game changer, I think.
Oh, I agree 100%. You actually said exactly what I was going to say, Dennis, about the sports and all those things. Um, Again, I think we just keep coming back to knowing our why. Why am I on that football team or that soccer team? Am I on it just to fulfill my own desires, or am I on it because God has sent me into the world to make disciples? So I need to go into the world. God didn't say it had to be boring or it had to be, like knocking on doors and inviting people to church, right? We're like you said, it's a natural place to build relationships. So if we're doing it for that, now we have a value and we know why. But I think that's where we miss it too often
Yeah,
is
and I
we
think we
change that
as
priority.
yeah, and we as parents need to do a better job of helping our kids grow into that question. Why
Right.
is it that we're doing this? Why is it that why don't we watch certain things? Why do we watch certain things? Why don't we do certain things? Why do we do certain things? Like there's a this whole discernment
Right.
idea is where I'm trying to go as a parent, at least.
Yeah.
Um, and I think a lot of times, and I've said this repeatedly, a lot of times we tell kids what to do instead of, or what to think instead of how to think,
How to think.
right?
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
that quote has been something that's kind of stuck with me. And as a youth pastor, as a parent, I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I help my kids understand how to think biblically? And maybe they think out loud, maybe they don't. That's another. That's another ode to your show, but it's a question of how do they think and how can I
Right.
help them think through what God would want them to do? Because eventually I'm not going to be here to tell them, quote unquote, what to think. They're going to have to
Right.
figure it out on their own. And they don't want me to tell them what to think, but they aren't opposed to me telling them or helping them understand and learn how to think. They're okay with that. And so I think a lot of rebellion comes whenever parents just top down say, this is how you ought to think. And that there's a time for that, right? Kids 5 years old, I'm going to tell you what to do. Kids 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, I want to
Right.
help you understand why. Even though it's kind of interesting because a 3 year old is number one question is why. So we've been asking that since we've been three, right? So
Yeah.
um, the
But
fourth thing, oh, go ahead. Go ahead. You got something.
yeah, before we move on, I just wanted to mention something that you're kind of talking about here, and you kind of said it jokingly, but thinking out loud. If we're going to teach our kids how to think, we as parents need to be willing to think out loud for them. We often want them to think we've got it all figured out. So if we think out loud with them, right? Have these conversations with our wives in the car. Have the conversation with them about, hey, here's this struggle, right? We're having a hard time finding a church, right? When you're leaving church on Sunday morning, now we're going to talk about why we did or didn't like that church, and struggle through that with them, so they see that, oh, mom and dad, this is how they process through things. And
Yeah.
so there's some value in us thinking out loud and helping them think that way.
Yeah, and that's something that I've been trying to grow into even as a dad, is just kind of having those conversations about what I'm thinking and why we're making the decisions that we're making, or even why we're not making decisions yet, because we're processing and we're thinking
Mm-hmm.
and we're praying and trying to bring them along as part of the family, where it's not just, and that, I mean, obviously leadership styles and those kinds of things come into play, but where it's not just hey, I've got an idea and this is what we're going to do. It's a, hey, I've got an idea. What do you guys think? Because
Right.
really, what an the adolescent wants, what a teenager wants, is to be treated like an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is they're not yet adults, but they are very adult like. And so to be able to help them process things and to be able to help them bring those things into the brain and the decision making process and all of that stuff, that's what I'm here for. That's what parents are here for, because by the time they do grow into adults with fully formed brains and fully formed bodies, and with all these decisions that they're going to have to make, then it's not just a, well, I don't know, I'm going to have to call mom and dad and find out whether I should be,
Right.
doing that or not.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to call mom and dad. They're just going to make a
They're going to do it. Yeah.
a split second decision, and they may or may not think about it.